Hey, Michael Balistreri, Black Snow Comics here. Got a little bit of a walk, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to maybe answer one of my more frequently asked questions. Hopefully it's not too bumpy, making everyone watch this barf. That wouldn't be good. But anyway, a question I get asked a lot is, how did you get into comics? How did you get started with comics? When I was a kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist. And by that I mean, there's two things. I wanted to either draw comic strips for newspapers, or I wanted to make cartoons. Drawing comic strips was probably the first idea that I really had. I really loved comic strips as a kid. I would read them in the newspaper all the time. I'd buy collections of books. I didn't really read comic books. Some of my favorites are like Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes was my big one. There's quite a few. What else was there? There's like Bizarro. Far Side was another big one. Quite a few. So I enjoyed a lot of those. And then there were some that I didn't really enjoy. I thought were a little more lame. I thought, well, I could do that. I could do better than that. So that was one of the first things that really motivated me. As I got a little older, I liked the idea of coming up with my own cartoon. I love cartoons. I love the idea of being able to tell kind of longer term stories and having kind of a connection with the audience watching, because I loved them. I like the idea that people would be seeing something I did long term. So those were kind of my goals. So how does that connect to comic books? Well, I drew a lot, and usually they were like copying other cartoon characters or kind of coming up with my own, that kind of thing, like a lot of kids do. And then when I was a little older, they had that Spider-Man cartoon, and they had X-Men and Batman, and those started introducing me really to more the idea of comic books. So I wasn't reading comic books, but I thought the whole concept was really cool. Those superhero shows really drew me in. So then, let's see. In middle school, I made a friend, and he was another creative person. And if you guys know the history of Black Snow Comics, is my friend Alex that I started Black Snow Comics with. And we would do all kinds of different creative things together. And one time we saw the movie Mystery Men. And if you haven't seen it, I think it's kind of an underrated early comic book movie. It was a little before its time. I think if it came out a little later, people would have been more into it. But basically, it's kind of a spoof superhero movie, more of a kind of a parody, but it's still really good. But basically, we saw that, and then we left saying, well, we could make something like that. Like, we really enjoyed the humor of it, so we decided to come up with our own kind of humorous comic book. And that's when we started laying the groundwork for Black Snow. So we kind of wrote it and worked on a little, and then put it on the back burner and worked on other stuff. I mean, at the time we were doing like comedy skits. We had kind of a pretend band we were doing, just all kinds of different things. So then, when was it? In high school, I took a screenwriting class, and this is when superhero stuff was starting to really take off. So Spider-Man and X-Men and stuff was coming out, and in my screenwriting class I hooked up with a couple of guys that still work in comics, and well, they weren't working in comics then, but they were pretty into it, and we made kind of our own superhero short movie that was kind of a parody superhero thing. And after I did that, I was thinking, well, we already wrote one, I could start working on it. So I just started drawing it, and then I showed it to Alex. He got excited. We looked back at our old script, decided we needed to rewrite it because it wasn't very good. Came up with another script that still wasn't that good, but we thought it was good at the time, and we just did it. So basically, how I got into comics was I just tried it. I still wasn't reading a lot of them. I wasn't that versed in a lot of comic book things, but I just went out there and did it, which is kind of like a younger attitude. You do that stuff a lot more when you're a kid or even a teenager. It's harder to do as an adult where you just jump into something like that. But that's basically where I started it. After that, I went back and forth with working on comic books and comic strips. It was the very early days of web comics, so that was something that really interested me. We started putting our comic book and our comic strips up on the internet. We had an old GeoCities website. I learned how to do some basic HTML and things like that. And really just whatever we needed to learn, I tried to learn. So that's pretty much how it all started, and it's just continued from there. I mean, I've taken breaks, of course, and some of the comics took a long time to make. If you've read the original Black Snow series, we took about 10 years to make the 6 issues, so it's not an ideal path to take, obviously, but I'm still going now, although I haven't done too much comics lately. I've been doing my daily drawing challenge, if you haven't seen it, so that's where I just try to do at least one drawing every day. Usually it's fan art, a lot of requests, things like that. Sometimes it's something a little different, so that's been pretty rewarding. I want to get back into some more comic book stuff. I've talked with Alex about working on some stuff, going back to some of our old projects. I've still got Paranormal Pinkerton, the issue 1. I've got that about a quarter of the way finished, so I really got to get back to that. So I'm still drawing. One of the things that made me want to do it was because I like the idea of being able to entertain people but not have my face like right out there. Like right now, this is a little uncomfortable for me. I'm not the kind of guy that likes to kind of put himself out there and be the center of attention. I'm pretty shy, really. If I had a day where I didn't talk to anybody, I wouldn't mind. I know there's people like my wife who would probably go insane if that was her, but it wouldn't be a big deal to me. So this is a way to entertain people without having to be out there. That's also why I kind of got into filmmaking, and that was an interest, rather than acting or something like that. So it's kind of a way to perform and entertain without physically like putting yourself on stage. You have your characters as kind of your avatars to act. So that's another reason why I got into it. So there you go. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, anyone can do it if you're interested. Just sit down and start drawing. There's no right or wrong way to do it at this point. There's such a variety out there, especially now almost everything's digitally based. So you can do any style you want. You can tell any story you want. Share it however you want. So just get out there and make it. All right.